hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in today to talk about World Trigger, chapter number 243. This chapter is titled The Away Mission Test, Part 39. And yeah, we are 39 parts into this away mission test. It is going to be insane whenever Ashihara, because of course we know that this is the final day of their, this may not be final day here, but like next day may be the final day of the away mission test, at least this sealed phase here before we get on to the actual combat phase, the guerrilla sort of warfare tactics that'll be coming on. But what I was getting to, is it going to be crazy when Ashihara does not change up the naming convention of those chapters? So it'll still be the away mission test part whatever, and we're going to probably get up and like, alright guys, this is the away mission test part 80. I know we have not had a different chapter title in almost 400 chapters, but this is what we're getting to. So it may be a little bit interesting whenever that happens. Yeah, I really don't remember if this is the final day of the sealed environment phase or not, if tomorrow is or whatever. I need to do a reread of this entire arc before we get to that point, so I can remember a bunch of important stuff. But yeah, this is going to be a long video here for mainly two reasons. Number one, we got a good old, I think it's like, what, a 30, or no, not 30, just shy of 30, I think it's like 28, yeah, 29 pages we got this month for World Trigger. And of course, this is the chapter for, what's this month, July of 2024, so thank you, Ashihara, thank you for providing us a chapter like always. But I really don't have too much else to say before we get into it. Like I said earlier, this is a decently long chapter, and also, the very end of this chapter, we cut around to a lot of A-rank members, and in my opinion, keeping track of all of the names of every single character on all of these individual new provisional squads can be a bit tough, but at the same point, the A-rankers can be even worse because we haven't seen half of them do anything. Of course, like, Kazama appears in the later half of this chapter. We all know Kazama. We will never forget who Kazama is because he's an important character. But at the same point, I don't remember who Maki is because she hasn't shown up and actually done anything worth remembering besides for sit here and grade characters like Suwa Squad, which all these characters in Suwa Squad have at least done something. Osamu's like the main character. Suwa is a important mentor and character. Katori is best girl in the series. Everybody has to remember her. And then Oki, I like Oki because my birthday is the same day as Oki's, so I find that a little funny. And at the same point, it's like, yeah, Ui didn't really have too much going on with her before, but now she has a lot going on with her. So it's easy to remember all of those characters. Also, they're sort of main characters for this arc, but whatever. Before I ramble too much more, I'd say let's go and get started with World Trigger, chapter number 100, chapter number 243. Let me get my head screwed on right. Away Mission Test, Part 39. So, if you guys do not remember what happened last chapter, Wakamura Squad finished up the rest of their battles for this day. They started off with Suwa Squad, blazed through a few other squads, and eventually ended up facing against Utagawa Squad, who completely steamrolled them. And last chapter ended off with Wakamura getting today's rankings in, and that's where we start off this chapter, with Wakamura telling everybody, alright guys, today's rankings are in, like, you all ready for this team? And everybody there's like, yeah, let's go. Hanazaki's like, yeah, let's take a look, let's go and get into it, right? And Soy's like, alright, well, I want to see the special simulation results first, since we were kind of on a roll today, and we can see the overall rankings after, right? So Wakamura does a little bit of manipulating on his computer, moves his mouse around, and eventually pulls up the special battle simulation exercise day 1 rankings. As we see in first place is, of course, Suwa Squad 7. I think we all could figure that part out. But in fourth place is Wakamura Squad 11. As Wakamura's like, whoa, fourth place? And everybody's like, oh, what? That's crazy, like, fourth, would you look at that? Like, that is awesome. And we see that Sasamori is just like, yeah, we place higher than heavy hitters like Mizukami and Ninamiya squads. Like, that is just simply incredible. And Hanazaki is just like, yeah, I love to see it. Like, let's go. That's awesome, right? And Hanazaki's like, yeah, Husei's strategy really paid off in the long run, right? And Husei's just like, yeah, on the whole, it did. Yeah, of course. And we see that as Husei says this, he's got his arms sort of crossed and he's nodding up and down with his eye closed. And Soi's just like, man, like, damn it, that really smug look he got going there just really pisses me off, right? She's like, but here's the thing, Husei has definitely earned that. I mean, we did amazing today mainly because of him. As eventually, Wakamura starts to get into his head and talking about some things as Wakamura does, but before any of that, I want to quickly go over all of these special battle simulation exercise day 1 rankings that we got. So Suwa Squad 7 is in the lead with 6 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. So a very good win rate right there, and they have a total of 620 points. Maybe an old me would have gone through to completely figure out how many points each matchup wins and loses and everything, but I don't really feel like that right now. Actually, no. That's actually a really, really simple answer. 1 win is 100 points because we see Suwa Squad got 6 wins and 1 draw, and they've got 620 points, which means a draw must be worth 20 points, right? If we look down at 11th place, which is Kuruma Squad, they got 2 wins, 6 losses, which had no points, and 2 draws, and they have 240 points. All right, that math was actually very simple. I was getting ready to say that an old Corbin would have done that, but a current one would not have. But that's actually pretty simple to figure out. Going down the line, Utagawa Squad 1 got 2nd place, which makes sense being that out of all of the strategies we saw from day 1, Suwa Squads and Utagawas were definitely the most powerful too. 3rd place, Kitazoe Squad 4. Makes sense from what we saw. 4th place, Wakamura Squad, they did bomber strategy. And then from there you get 5th with Murakami Squad 9. There's actually a tie in 6th place with Kodera Squad 6 and Inamiya Squad 8. Then 8th place we have OG Squad, 10th Murakami, 9th Murakami, 10th Kakizaki, and 11th Kuruma Squad 5. And as we sort of go all the way down there, of course Wakamura Squad got 480 points because they got 4 wins, 2 losses, and 4 draws, which equals out to 480. So yeah, all things considered, these rankings do make sense from what we've seen so far. Of course, Suwa has the winning strategy by far. Utagawa had another incredible strategy that worked incredibly well against everybody else. And Kitazoe, we saw that their bombardment strategy worked extremely well. And going through the rest of them, we didn't see Mizukami's battle, I don't think, about against Wakamura. We may have. If we did, I forgot it. Sue me, I'm sorry. But getting back into what Wakamura was thinking earlier, he's like, all right, we placed dead last in the standard battle simulations 3 days running, but here we're in 4th. And he's like, this squad is very capable of winning as long as we have a good working strategy, right? At this point, Hanazaki's like, alright guys, so since we placed so high in the simulation rankings, maybe our overall rank got like a boost too, like maybe we're no longer 11th, maybe we're like 10th or 9th. And Wakamura's like, alright, let me check. And as he goes and clicks on the thing, he gets very disappointed because they are still in 11th place. As we see, 11th place is Wakamura Squad 11 with 7,267 points. But they are only trailing about 500 points, no, about 450 after 10th place, which is Kakizaki's Squad 3. As we get a recap of all of the rankings here, 1st place, Mizukami Squad 9, makes perfect sense. They are still incredibly ahead with a about 1,000 point difference between them and Suwa Squad, who is in 2nd. 3rd is Kodera, 4th Kitazoe, 5th Murakami, 6th Utagawa, 7th Ninamiya, 8th Kuruma, 9th OG, 10th Kakizaki, and 11th Wakamura Squad. These don't look to have changed really too much since the last time we saw them. And of course we know that some squads like OG Squad and Kakizaki Squad aren't gunning for this whole idea of like, hey, we're going to use all of our smarts here to get all of this done. What they are really waiting for and looking forward to is the whole reaction of, all right, whenever we get into that combat test, those 2 days of guerrilla warfare, we are going to slay all of you guys compared to the rest, right? So that is what a lot of these squads are waiting for, right? Well, Hanazaki's like, well, I guess one good day of results can't change the overall picture. He's like, it is kind of a bummer here, right? And Sasamori's is like, yeah, but with that said, the gap between us and 10th place has really shrunk. Because, yeah, before, I don't quite remember what it was before, but I don't think it was just 450 points, which is really good for Wakamura Squad here. Hanazaki is also like, yeah, he's like, man, now it feels like we've sort of wasted those first few days. Like, if only I had done just a little bit better. And Wakamura is, of course, healing all of his squad say this. And I do like that there's a little sound effect coming off of Wakamura. It's just that's, Shian, which pretty much means gloom in Japanese. And it's like, we just see that Wakamura is very gloomy over all of this, right? But, Wakamura is just thinking to himself, like, man, it's true. If only I'd performed better from the very start, been a better captain, like, we could have done all of this. But before he can sort of, like, get deeper into his mind, Hisoi's just like, hey, guys, there's no crying over spilt milk. Like, there's no denying that we are on the up and up. And he's like, we have got 2 days left, so let's rise as high as we can. Like, we may not make it to first, and we may not even make it to, like, 6th or 7th. But we can definitely get above 11th. Like, we gotta at least try. And the entire team just does the whole thing of like, yep, right, oh, let's go. Like, yeah, indeed, oh, yeah. Everybody sort of gets all of their things in. As we sort of get a little overview of, again, this is Wakamura Squad 11, current ranking 11th place, daily rank 4th place, special simulation 4th place. So overall, they have done extremely good today. And the reason we sort of get this overview is because this is what the monitor room is seeing. Because currently sitting in the monitor room, we have 2 characters from Kusakabe Squad. We have Kusakabe herself, and we also have Ryuji, who is the all-rounder from... What's his squad called? Kusakabe Squad, right? So, we see the 2 of them are sitting here, and Ryuji's just like, I think that Rokuro really put into work today. And he's like, the guy did his best, and it legitimately worked. Like, he should take the win and be glad over what happened. And Kusakabe is like, yeah, you are right. And Ryuji's like, yeah, oh, and did Rokuro and his people guess correctly about the strategies that Suwa Squad used? And, because of course, last time, there wasn't any confirmation that Hyusei's best guess was the actual correct guess on what Suwa Squad was actually doing. And that's something I found really interesting about last chapter, is there's still that room to sort of hear like, oh, no, that wasn't true at all. But Kusakabe says here like, yeah, more or less. And she says like, hey, for one, using the follow the leader on ally units made it definitely easier to manage all of their sniper ads. And she's like, there were a handful of creative innovations like that, most of which were Makumo's ideas, right? And we get a little overview of what follow the leader does, which I think is very self-explanatory, as it's like, hey, units will automatically follow a designated leader unit, right? And Ryuji's like, oh, I guess it wasn't a fluke, like that guy beating enemy in the rank wars, right? So we're saying like, oh yeah, Osamu's actually pretty good at strategy, so it's no wonder that his whole, guys, I've had a hound the entire time, did something like that, right? At this point, we cut away from these 2, but don't worry, we'll get much more of them later in the chapters. We cut over to Suwa Squad 7. This is the first time we have seen these guys in a few chapters, and as much as I like Wakamura Squad and like having them be sort of the POV squad for this part of these away mission tests, I love Suwa Squad. How can you not love Suwa Squad? But as we move to them, we see that we sort of start off this little section with Suwa sort of talking like, alright guys, the fact of the matter is, we came out on top again today, and everybody in the squad is like, yeah, let's go! I love Kotori's sort of little thing of like, hey, is anyone actually surprised that this is the outcome? Because, like, out of all of the things Kotori could have said, that is probably the most on brand for her to say, as we get the idea of, alright, this is Suwa Squad 7, current ranking 2nd place, which is above where they were before, daily rank 1st place, special simulation 1st place. Oki's is like, alright guys, just like yesterday, your tactics are really getting the job done, Osamu. And Osamu's just like, oh, yeah, thank you. And Osamu's like, hey, it really wouldn't have been able without great ideas from you guys, like that follow the leader trick and the radar jammer. As we see that a Tryon soldier that they used in battle was the Jamacat, which is a jamming specialist unit, It looks like a cat, but the tail is a sort of like radio tower that, of course, emits jamming waves. And we see something interesting here. Of the creator of this unit was actually Oki, but the implementer was Yui, which is a little interesting, saying like, all right, yeah, Oki actively made this unit here, but Yui used her slot in the rankings to create it and sort of make it work, which I think is very interesting, given that it's probably a low-cost unit, so she was able to make it on a lower budget with her, of course, lower Tryon levels similar to Osamu's, so pretty interesting right there. And of course, because who's this face? Osamu just says like, hey, this wouldn't be able to possible without your guys. Of course, Katori has a lower mark, just saying like, hey, this is all good except my Tryon soldier got vetoed, as we see the two units that she ended up making. One was called the Robo Katori, which cost just under 1,100 points, and we see that Suwa's reaction was like, hey, no, that's too pricey, and like, pass it. And then we see the Economizer one, which has a cost just above 800, and we see that that is the one that ended up winning for Katori. And Osamu was like, hey, sorry, I guess, but Katori's just like, hey, who cares? As long as we keep winning, nothing matters. Like, because victory gets me closer to that date, my ultimate prize. I had legitimately forgot about this was a plot point that was keeping Katori invested in all of these matches, was a date with Karasawa. But this is why I love World Trigger. I'm gonna be honest with you right now. It's such a fun character motivation to have this character have, but either way, Yui's like, hey, properly motivated Katori can't really be beat. And Suwa just starts to talk, like, say, like, hey, but take a look at all of this, though. Like, Wakamura Squad actually brought some heat and some wins in today, right? And Oki's like, yeah, true enough there. And he's like, jumping up to 4th place is something to really write home about, right? And he's like, that nasty flying unit must have really pulled its weight, right? And Osamu's like, yeah, well, we were right there ready to shoot it down early before it could have actually done that, because if we would have been hit, it would probably the day would have gotten different for us for sure, right? And Katori's just like, ah, man, Rokuro should have been doing all of this from the start. Like, he could have shown us he was capable and actually won. Like, it would have been really, really nice. And she was like, but he can't understand how much he sucks until he takes a beating. And like, that doofus, that good old four-eyed fool, right? And we see through some Tryon communication waves, sort of like the one-way sort of communication that these squads have. We see that Yui goes and sort of talks to Suwa and is like, man, she seems like she's in a good mood, right? And Wakamura's like, yeah, holding it together for now at least. Because of course, as we remember, whenever Katori is complaining, she is happy and she is in good spirits. So, pretty nice there. And I sort of love the use of the one-way communication between Yui and Suwa there, right? But then Oki just says, like, hey, so the only squads that ended up taking us down today were Utagawa, Kitazoe, and Ninomiya squads, eh? As we sort of get a look at their sort of rundown, I'm not going to go through every single squad that they went through, or whatever intervals they went through. If you want to check this out, go on Viz and pull up the chapter yourself. At least for like the month or 2 months after this video gets posted, these chapters will still be free due to the whole thing of like, oh yeah, the 3 most recent chapters on Viz are free, so you can go read this chapter so to get all of these details. But of course we know 6 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw for Suwa Squad today. So 3 took them down: Utagawa, Kitazoe, and Ninomiya's. All very valid squads to go down to. And Oki even starts to talk about their strategies against certain squads. It's like, Utagawa Squad had to be the trickiest for sure. It didn't even give us time to like form ranks and everything, because of course we see their whole thing where they just bum rushed all of the squads that came to them. Katori's just like, yeah, going up against Kitazoe's squad felt like rolling the dice, and she's like, and I think we could have beaten Ninomiya's with a little more effort. But she says, it was mostly a bad matchup the way to Amatori's overpowered unit came to our guys. And he was like, yeah, of course. And we see this little image here of Osamu looking at his computer and reminiscing on, of course, Chika's overpowered unit that she used earlier in the battle simulations, right? And we get this little visual of course, the unit. And there's a few things to note here. first, the most important one is Osamu just takes a look at, like, the face of it, right? And, of course, the face is reminiscent of Replica. And Osamu just thinks about this, and he just thinks about the scene of Replica being stranded on the After Couture ship as it flies up, and pretty much Replica just telling Osamu, like, hey, protect Yuma for me, will you? Which, oh god, just sitting here and just thinking about it, like, oh, that scene just, like, gives me the chills. It's so masterfully put together, like, I love that scene. But either way, Osamu just sees and thinks of this and gives that acknowledgement to Chika's unit. Of course, this unit was called the Yuma, which is another little bit of, like, oh, it's just so nice and heartwarming. And Suwa's like, hey, what's up, Makumo? And Osamu's like, oh, it's nothing. He's like, I'm just feeling good and focused. And at this point, we cut over to Utagawa Squad 1, but before we cut over there, in this panel where we see that the Yuma unit, of course Chika's Yuma unit, cutting down one of their Tryon soldiers, their sort of rad thing, their rad sniper, there's a thing here that says it got 600 points off of killing these things. Ashihara has actually come out since then in a tweet you'll be seeing on the screen right now. This is a tweet from the official World Trigger account that has been translated by the World Trigger English fan account. And as you sort of see on screen, because I'm going to put it on screen, it just reads like, hey, there's a mistake in chapter number 243, which was released today. On page 10 of the chapter in the fourth panel, the points placed at 600 point. It should actually be 411 point. This would be corrected in the book version. I apologize. Thank you in advance. Original post was signed by Ashihara. So none of us should be blaming Ashihara for making this small of a mess up in such a complicated series where it's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, my number was a bit off. Like, calm down, Ashihara, it's alright. I will be buying the World Trigger book format anyway, so I will see this corrected there. So, yeah, whatever, but a little bit of an interesting thing Ashihara actually came out and made an official correction for this chapter, which I think is pretty interesting. Like I said, after Osamu says that whole thing of I'm just feeling good and focused, we cut over to Utagawa Squad 1, where of course this is the squad that Yuma's in. And we sort of get in our notice like, hey, the current ranking for Utagawa Squad 1, they are in 6th place, rising up in the rankings, daily rank 3rd place, special simulation 2nd place. So, very good for Utagawa Squad. And we open up this little image of Utagawa Squad with Yuma looking very fondly at his computer screen also, right? And we see that, oh, no, I think his name's Urashima. Please tell me his name's Urashima, because I'm going to feel very stupid if it isn't Urashima. Utagawa Squad 1, Urashima, it is Urashima. I'm so happy I remembered at least one character's name, right? So Urashima turns over to Yuma and is like, hey, Yuma, what's got you grinning over there, right? And Yuma's like, I'm just thinking about our match with Ninomiya Squad today, right? And Urshima's like, yeah, their designs were seriously out there, right? And, oh no, this is bad. I've memorized all of Wakamura Squad names and all of Suwa Squad name. I do not remember all of Utagawa Squad's names. Let me just open up volume 24 and keep the page open here. Kotaro Tomoe, who of course is the guy from Kakizaki Squad, is then just like, yeah, they barely even resemble Tryon soldiers. Like, I'm almost surprised how they got away with that, right? And Shiki, the operator, is like, yeah, I suspect those were all Kagami's designs. Of course, Kagami is the current operator for Ninomiya Squad, and of course, she is originally from Arafune Squad. So, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Shiki and Kagami sort of have a nice relationship going on between the two of them, because their squads are relatively close in the rankings, if I'm not mistaken. But, of course, there's a lot of these small character interactions in World Trigger that can be definitely hard to remember every single part of, especially in a very complicated scene such as this, with all of our almost 200 plus characters all having something to do with each other, right? Utagawa is like, yeah, that'd probably be my guess too of all of this. And Yuma didn't just speak something like, hey, but our designs are just as intense and opposing though, right? And he's like, hey, it's all thanks to your creativity, Shiki, right? And Yuma's like, I really like the ones where the insides are showing, right? Which, that was my personal favorite Shrine Soldier from last time. I really loved how that sort of like exoskeleton looks, so I'm happy to have something in common with Yuma. I think that's pretty damn cool. As we see that Kotaro is like, yeah, I'm actually a fan of the pyramid myself, which I think the pyramid was also the other best looking design that they had. And I won't be surprised if those are Ashihara's 2 favorite designs, and he's just like, alright, I'll just shove these onto these characters right here, right? But we see that Shiki starts to blush a little bit, just being like, oh, they're nothing special, like, don't worry about any of it there. As we suddenly, as all of this is going on, we suddenly cut over to the monitor room again, where we are with, oh gosh, I think this is Kako of Kako Squad, and of course there's Midorikawa here. No, alright, it's Futaba Kuroe from Kako Squad. I was right that she is from Kako Squad. And then it is Midorikawa from, oh no, Midorikawa is from, it's Squad 4, Kusakabe Squad. Because that's the squad that, of course, Kusakabe's captain and Ryuji is the operator. I think that is correct, right? So Kuroe is like, hey, Utagawa Squad may have performed well in the special simulations today, but they wasted too much time designing their soldiers, right? And she's like, and considering they made the least headway with delegated assignments, shouldn't they have had Shiki handing all of that homework instead? As we sort of see the little list of like, alright, here's the desk work aptitude of all of the Utagawa Squad people, and we see that Utagawa and Shiki are like the 2 top, and the 2 lowest are of course Yuma and Kotaro, because I never expected bookwork from Yuma, and we sort of see in the middle between those 2 is Urashima, which does make sense character writing wise. Midorikawa then speaks up and is like, hey, but on the other hand, she spent that time getting more comfortable and chatting with the guys. And it's like, that was a priority given the combat phase of the exam that's currently looming ahead of everything, right? And Midorikawa's like, yeah, you gotta keep your eye on the future, Futaba, not the present. And Futaba's just like, oh my god, just shut up, Midorikawa, right? And she pretty much says like, hey, unless the squad is willing to write off the sealed environment phase altogether, they should aim for a much more balanced approach, right? She says like, hey, like Murakami Squad didn't do so hot in the battle simulations today, but they set aside time to chip away the delegated assignments. In the end, it put them in a very decent position. And Midorikawa's like, oh, is that the case, right? Just like, But at this point, we cut over to Murakami's Squad 10. Of course, their current ranking today is in 5th place, which is lower than what it was before, with a daily rank of 9th place and a special simulation place of 9th place. The first character we see here from Murakami's Squad 10 is, of course, Kumagai, and she's very down on herself right now. She's like, man, sure, I get that we're like in a decent position, but I was really hoping for more battle simulation wins today, right? And Tsutsumi, who was the gunner from Suwa Squad, is here just like, hey, is that why you're so down in the dumps right now? And Kumagai is just like, hey, I know I'm in no position, like, given my own lackluster showing today, but I still can't wish, or help to wish that I would have just done better. Like, it would have been nice, right? And she's like, I mean, all of you guys are so incredibly smart, and Murakami's got that amazing side effect of his, so by all means, this squad should be like a top contender given everything, right? And we see that at the doorway, Kurauchi? Yeah, that's this guy's name, shooter from OG Squad, and the operator, Hiyami, sort of just like appeared leaning on the door and just like, hey, you surely give us, like, way too much credit. That's what, Karachi said, and, like, Yami's just like, yeah, man, you're making me blush, like, all of that, like, just saying, like, pointing out all of the great parts of everybody, and those two are sort of just reacting in a funny way, right? And, what I love is in the background, we see Murakami sort of just walking by, and we don't even see his face, there's just no reaction to it, which is, I think, is a very funny thing, right? But we see Murakami in the next panel as he's just like, hey, my side effect isn't really, like, all so powerful. Like, don't you know, it's like, It just makes me more efficient than an average person when training and studying. Like, it doesn't necessarily help right here, right now, in these things. He's like, and that's a whole different ballpark than these simulation battles, which demand impromptu ingenuity. Tatsumi's just like, yeah, it makes sense. It's like processing what you learn versus spur-of-the-moment ideas. Kurachi is like, hey, it's a simple fact that this squad didn't wind up with the idea people. As we get a little image here of what Ashihara considers to be the other squad's idea people. As we see Oji here, we see the kid who is currently in Mizukami Squad, I think is Kashio, maybe? We see the girl with the stupid looking hat sort of thing. How quickly... I think her name's Akane, but I think she quit Border, maybe? There's, of course, Shiki, there's Sasumori, and there's Taichi also in this image, right? And Hyami, the operator, is like, hey, we're more of the types to put all of these ideas into practice, right? Murakami continues saying, like, hey, rather than outlandish strategies in the heat of battle, this squad is suited to diligent consistency that bears out eventually, right? And we see that Kumagai says, like, hey, exactly, that's what's so frustrating about all of this. She says, like, hey, if only there'd been, gosh, I can't speak. Kumagai just says, like, hey, if only there'd been 3 more days of standard battles, like, heck, even 2 more days, we could have put together a solid counter strategies to come away with more decent wins, right? Kurashi's like, hey, the rules are rules, it's just how it is. And Hyami's is like, yeah, the merciless schedule marches on. Either way, Murakami just says, like, hey, and special simulations are only today and tomorrow. So yes, there is a tomorrow in these battle simulations, and tomorrow is the 7th and final day, if I'm not mistaken, right? But Hyami's just like, hey, it'll be all over if we can't even react to the other squad's tricky themes, right? But Tsutsui just speaks up like, hey, in that case, why don't we treat tomorrow as if it's day 4 instead? And Kumagai's just like, day 4, like, what are you talking about, right? And Tatsumi is just like, hey, today was the first day of this stuff, so predicting our rivals' tactics was basically impossible. And tomorrow, everyone will be building on what they learned in today's matches, right? It's like, so what if we end up predicting Day's 2 strategies based on today, and then try to predict Day 3 strategies based on our predictions for Day 2? By beating them to the punch with far-reaching counter strategies, we might stand a chance against squads who employ weird and zany tactics, right? And Murakami's like, so what you're suggesting is that we use today's results to go further down the path of possibilities than anybody else. And Karachi's just like, well, possibly more effective than basic counter strategies, yes. And I mean, we do have plenty of spare time tonight. And Hyami just says, like, and I would really feel better about this plan, hoping for a sudden flash of inspiration here, right? And eventually, everybody's just like, yeah, we can start by writing notes for tactics and everything, and like, oh yeah, and I can focus on all of these Tryon soldiers, and Murakami says like, hey, I'm happy to handle half of that task with you. And eventually all of this sort of brings up Kumagai's spirits. She's like, all right, same here. I'd better hurry you all when dinner in so we can all get working on this stuff, right? And Murakami's like, hey, relax. There's no rush in anything here. Like, don't rush anything. And that's where we end off this scene as we go to the monitor room. But I would be very lacking in my review here if I did not mention the great and amazing panel on page 18 here. Whenever the whole idea of like, all right, let's predict strategies for day 2 so we can sort of counteract their counteracts and counteract those again. And we see Murakami here, of course, chibi versions of Murakami and a chibi version of Karachi sitting here, playing a card game where they sort of put down one card and they're like, hey, I counter you, I counter your counter, I counter your counter that countered my counter, I counter your counter that countered my counter that countered your counter that countered my counter, which is really funny. I don't think I've had this pretty well on the channel recently, but I am a big fan of Magic the Gathering as a card game. And of course, in Magic the Gathering, there are specific cards called counterspells. And what counterspells do is they literally counter a target spell that an opponent puts on a table, and you can counter counterspells, which is a very fun thing. So I do like to imagine they are sitting down here and actively playing cards and like actively countering each other, but it is obvious that I don't think they are playing Magic here. If anything, they may be playing like a game like Yu-Gi-Oh or something. No, they're not. The card backs have more like a diamond pattern to them. Well, I think both Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Magic cards both have more of like cylindrical backgrounds to them. So either way, not that it matters. I just found it to be a really, really fun panel of like, hey, I counter your counter, I countered my counter, but I counter your counter too. So I do think that is a little fun, all things considered. And before we actually get back into the monitor room, where of course we have Ryuji and Kusakabe talking again, I've actually got to go out and do sort of life stuff, so you guys will be cutting back into me right now whenever I get back to talk about the rest of this chapter. So I'll see you guys right now, for I am back, and it is actually a different day that I'm recording this on. I didn't like go out, do my real life stuff, and then come back to record this. It's actually 2 days later that the second half of this World Trigger video is getting recorded, so if I sound different or anything like that, my bad, I am sorry. Please don't sue me. Sue my computer. Yeah, no, I don't know. But yeah, let's continue on this World Trigger chapter here. Of course, what I alluded to what was happening next is that we are cutting back to the monitor room where Ryuji and Kusakabe are sitting, of course, talking about things very much going on, right? And of course, they are currently talking about what we just saw with Murakami Squad 10, where the whole thing of Kumagai is like, alright, we're going to brute force this, their strategies and counter their counters and all of that sort of random stuff. And Ryuji's just like, are they for real? Like, are they trying to use this method to brute force, like, potential future strategies? Like, what in the world is that? And Kusakabe's like, well, it's honestly just a sort of gamble that Tsutsumi would come up with in the end. And she's like, it's not exactly efficient use of time or effort, but it might be worthwhile for Murakami Squad, which excels in powering through lengthy tasks, being that is sort of their specialty in this exam. Because, of course, Murakami sort of picked this team not only for their intellect, but also their battle prowess in the second half of the battle simulation. So, but they still want to try as hard as they can in the sealed environment, right? So Ryuji's like, oh, that's great. Well, I really hope it pays off for them then, right? But he's like, but when dealing with new rules that drop on the dime of a hat, is it really clever that all of these ideas will lead to this concise victory? And Kusakabe is like, hey, ideas themselves matter, but the squad captain's approach might honestly matter a bit more. And Ryuji's like, their approach, interesting, as all of a sudden, we see two more A-rank captains walk into the room, as we see, of course, Kazama, who we all know Kazama, we won't forget Kazama, and we also see Fuyushima, who is, of course, one of the two trappers, I think, that we know in World Trigger. Of course, Shinji Fuyushima, the captain of Fuyushima Squad. So, Fuyushima and Kazama are also here now, right? But Kazama's like, okay, interesting thought. Do you care to really elaborate on that? And we see that Ryuji's like almost shocked, like, whoa, it's Kazama, oh my gosh, Fuyushima, like, whoa, what are you guys doing here, right? But Kusakabe, sort of just ignoring all of Ryuji's antics, is just like, hey, here's my interpretation based on the results that we have seen. The squads that came out ahead today were the ones whose captain zeroed in on an idea that led to determine their entire approach to all of the matches. So, we see this example sort of with Suwa Squad, with Suwa pretty much getting handed a lot of letters saying, like, right, here's Ui's idea, Kotori, Oki, and Makumo's, all of their ideas on separate pieces of paper. And then, of course, Suwa goes through and reads all of them and picks out one of them, which, of course, we know was Osamu Mikumo's, and then they worked on filling out all of those plans from there, right? That's pretty much what Kusakabe continues on saying, like, hey, with that main idea as a central pillar. They solicited more ideas that synergize with the main one. That's one type of captain. And Kazama's like, okay, so you're basically describing Utagawa, Kitazoe, Suwa, and Wakamura squads, what they all did, because of course, Wakamura Squad zeroed in on Husei's Canadian bomber. We know that Kitazoe's was all on that. We didn't see inside of Kitazoe's squad, but we know what their plan of attack was with the whole rush, and of course Utagawa's was the whole, like, just attack all at once that we're guessing that Yuma probably came up with, right? And we see that Fuyushima sort of adds, like, and we could probably add Murakami Squad into that also, right? But Kusakabe just continues saying, like, hey, on the other hand, we have captains who try to make use of everyone's ideas and ultimately wound up employing middle-of-the-road tactics, sort of just to appease everybody, right? As we see this example is being shown with Kuruma's squad. Kusakabe just continues saying, like, hey, they fumbled around coming up with solid tactics and counters and lagged behind the battle with an overly balanced approach, right? Kazama's in, like, hey, but what you're saying is it necessarily doesn't pay off to have everyone's thoughts and opinions, right? And Kusakabe's like, mind you, it's a different story when one was trying to help one's squad mates learn and grow, but there's plenty to be gleaned from both success and failure. It counts on all of this various experience, right? And Kusakabe sort of just finishes off her little speech here, just saying, like, hey, but if the goal at hand is to win in battle, then it is the captain's duty to manage the squad's tactics effectively, right? And I love sort of Ryuji's comment here, as, of course, Kusakabe has said all of this important stuff that does make a whole lot of sense. And he's just like, well, don't you have it all figured out, Miss Kusakabe, right? It's like, come on, like, he's just, like, a little pissed off about this for some reason. I mean, aren't they all in the same squad? I want to just recheck this, yeah. Kusakabe, yeah, Ryuji is part of Kusakabe Squad, so of course they know each other and all of that, but it's just a little funny to see how he's just like, oh, don't you have it all figured out? But suddenly, of course, these bays that they're in aren't sealed or anything. So Ryuji then sort of, like, is in his chair, which I want to believe is a rolling chair because of what I see here. He sort of just rolls back and then sticks his head over the side of their bay into the other bay where we see two other A-rankers sitting there. We see number one, the operator of Fuyushima Squad, who is Maki, Risa Maki. We see her sitting there. And we also see the operator of Kazama Squad, who is Mikami. So we see Mikami and, what's her name, Maki here. I need to look at those, say it one more time. Alright. Maki, Mikami. Maki, Mikami. Maki, Mikami. Either way, Ryuji sort of just, like, backs up and sticks his head over the side, saying, like, hey, Maki, you want to offer any rebuttal to my captain over here? And Maki's like, oh, come on, just get lost over here, right? And Ryuji's like, hey, come on, give me something here, give me something, right? But Maki's like, alright, the squads with more losses and wins simply couldn't come up with an idea to serve as that central pillar today, right? Of course, building off of what Kusakabe just said. She continues saying, like, hey, they can make only do with what they have, so I say the results, to speak elegantly, or to equality of each agent, regulated in the captain in particular, right? And Ryuji's like, yeah, you got it, that's great right there, right? Which, I guess she only, like, built that up slightly, also adding that whole idea of, like, hey, they just speak to the quality of each agent rather than the captain, who it sort of seems like Kusakabe was sort of digging more onto the captains, right? But either way, Maki's like, alright, now it's time for you to get lost, Ryuji. And Ryuji's like, alright. And he sort of shrinks back around to the corner where he is with Kusakabe and all of them. And we pretty much see that a little bit of insight from Kazama, as he, of course, hears all of this. And he's like, alright. As a captain herself, Kusakabe thinks her responsibility lies with the other captains. Meanwhile, the two non-captains in this debate think that the rank and file also need to step up. So, of course, I guess that's being Ryuji and Maki, because Mikami doesn't say anything. She sort of just sits there and looks pretty. I mean, we see her in literally 2 shots of the chapter, like 2 separate panels, and we do not see her again at all. But pretty much, Kazama just says, like, alright, whatever it keeps to boost morale high, and he's like, whatever. And we see that Fuyushima is like, yeah, smart thinking for somebody so young. Yeah, it's sort of nice to see Kazama and see what he's sort of thinking here, being that we honestly rarely see Kazama these days. I mean, he played a pivotal role there in like those first 40 chapters of the whole Battle of Osamu, and then we have seen Kazama do a lot of other exemplary things throughout the series. And yeah, just seeing that he's sort of doing something during this test, it is a little cool to see, right? But at this point, we cut over to our second to last transition of the chapter, as we switch over to Kakizaki's Squad 3, where we see their current ranking is 10th place, and their special simulation ranking for a day is 10th place, and their daily rank is 5th place. So pretty much this information on this page is really spread out a whole lot, so it's a little interesting. But as we cut into the squad here, of course, we see all of the members. We see the great captain Kakizaki. We see the dynamic duo that is Inukai and Kageura, because that's just like, it is seriously an hilarious grouping of people, right? And then we see the Fujimaru, the operator, and of course Taichi, who is the guy on the team, right? But we see that Taichi is pretty much sitting here, and he has his, he's pretty much got his shirt pulled over his mouth, and is obviously just, like, sulking in his chair. I even think that he's sort of got, like, his knees, like, in the fetal position, has got his shirt covering all of it, as he's still wearing his weird baseball cap-looking thing. And Fujimaru's just like, hey, what are you hiding from over there, Taichi? And Taichi's like, it's nothing, and he's for like really down in the dumps here, and he even says that like, I know I bum everyone out when I'm down in the dumps, so I'm nothing. I'm just an empty void. Treat me like I'm not even here, okay? As we suddenly see that Fujimaru sort of steps up and walks around to the side of the room where Taichi is, and tries to pull off his hat, right? And she's like, all right, come on now. Now you're being an even bigger bummer than before. Like, come on, like, quit trying to disappear on us, right? And Taichi's like, oh, no. As he's just, like, trying to keep on his hat on all costs, right? And he's just like, you all must have realized it by now, but I'm not cut out to be a part of this selection test. Like, why am I even here, right? And he's like, I'm the reason the squad can't win. I've been dead away since the day I was born, right? And as all of this is happening, Kakizaki's like, come on, Taichi, like, that's not right. And he's like, come on, you are way off the mark. Let's take a look at this. As he sort of flips his computer screen around, as on his computer we see the special assignment points that were allotted to all of the teams today, right? And he's like, see all the special assignment points for today? We got a perfect score. As they take a look, and we pretty much just see the breakdown here. It's just like, all right, here's all the assignment points everybody got, the special assignment, the evaluations from everybody, and everything else. And we see that every single person, Kakizaki, Fujimaru, Kageura, Taichi, and Inukai, they all got 100 points on this special assignment, right? And we see that Fujimaru's like, perfect? Like, that's almost impossible, right? And Kageura's like, hey, hang on. Didn't making Trine soldiers count as a special assignment today? Like, what's up with that? And Inukai's like, hey, Taichi, your contributions towards our little army were really huge today, right? And Fujimaru's like, yeah, come on, look at that. 5 perfect scores nets us 500 points. And Kakizaki's like, hey, a decent score is typically around 85 points. So that puts us about 80 points ahead of all of the others, as this is the point where we see that their daily rank is 5th place, which is a lot better than it has been these past few days. And Inukai is just like, yeah, there's nothing special about the Trine soldiers the rest of us made, so we definitely have you to thank for those high marks, Taichi, right? Because, of course, earlier in this chapter, there's that whole idea of the ideas man who was Taiki in this sort of scenario. It may have been last chapter. Yeah, it was definitely last chapter. Nope, it was this chapter, about halfway through it into Kumagai section. Yeah, we see that Taiki is one of this squad's ideas people, right? And we're sort of seeing that on display right here, right now. Yeah, pretty much just Inikai just is like, hey, thank you for helping us out with that today, Taichi. And we see that Kagira's like, yeah, for sure, man. You did a good little job, right? And we see that Fujimaru just gets her voice all like high and bubbling. She's like, alright, good for you, Taichi. Old crew's got an eye for talent, and this is proof right here. And as she's sort of like rubbing his head a little bit, she sort of looks down and she sort of has this scene where she sort of imagines what Taiki is going to say here, as she's just like, hey, what's wrong with you now, right? And what she pretty much expects him to say is like him to pop up and be his normal like bubbly self, and Taichi's just like, hey, I must have been a secret prodigy all along. It's like, oh shucks, right? But he actually doesn't do this, and all of a sudden we see that he sort of stands up and starts sulking as much as he sort of just looks over and he's just like, I gotta stop whining, I know, I promise I'll do it, but because I've got people who believe in me like you guys, I just don't really want to let them down, right? And we see that he's got a little bit of snot coming out of his nose, and we see a few tears welling up in his tear ducts, as he's obviously getting ready to cry at all the support his team is just giving him. We see that Kakizaki is like, oh yeah, we'll definitely support you to the end, Taiki, right? And he's like, because we know that we can count on you. And he sort of looks down at Taichi and sort of says this, and we sort of just end off the scene there. This is a bit of a weird scene. I understand the whole reason of it is supposed to be like, alright, throughout the entire series, we know that Taichi has been sort of a character who has, how do I say this? Not bullied because of, but he has always looked down on himself about not being good enough for a lot of these scenarios. And here, after seeing what he did, so of course he was focused on like, hey, he has the ideas to make these Tryon soldiers great, so focusing on him for this, it's a really cool thing, and I really do like what they have done here, right? But we finally get to the final page of the chapter and the final part of the second page of the chapter. But as we cut to this final scene, again, the Suwa Squad 7, we see that they are all sitting down to eat dinner. Presumably, Ui cooked this dinner tonight, as she's just like, all right, dinner's ready. And from what Oki says, that this meal looks pretty appetizing. Victoria's like, all right, great, I'm starving. And we see that they all go to pray for the meal before they eat it, and like, all right, and we're grateful for the meal, right? And they're all like, all right, thank you for the meal, of course, to Ui. And as this is happening, Sue's like, all right, guys, well, while we're eating, let's decide about tomorrow. And we end off the chapter on all of the team going, all right, sounds good. And that's where we end off this chapter this week. Or this month, I should say, not this week. What are my overall thoughts on this chapter? This is definitely an interesting ending for the chapter, being that it's just, Sue's like, all right, while we're eating, let's decide about what we're going to do tomorrow. And that's it. It's definitely not as, like, invigorating as, like, all the endings we've had. Like, all right, guys, let's check out the scores. Like, that's sort of more of a cliffhanger, while this is more of a, all right, team, we're going to figure something out here. And that's really all there is to it. But going throughout all of the scene cuts in this chapter, again, of course, at first we start off with Wakamura Squad, which throughout this arc, we have, of course, been focused on Wakamura Squad, and before, like, I still don't particularly care for Hanazaki, Sasamori, and Hisoi, but I have really come to start caring about these characters because of how they've been treated around Wakamura and Hyusei and all of them, and I want to see Squad 11 succeed, and I feel like that's something Ashihara is slowly pushing now. I don't think all of these guys are going to be going on the away mission test. If anything, Wakamura, I think, would be the only one who would maybe do it, but it's also sort of hinted that he may have other roles in Border. So it is really nice to see, and Wakamura Squad at the beginning, really love what they're doing. All of the monitor room stuff is just like, okay, like, we start off with Ryuji and Kusakabe, and then we cut back to them later, and I understand what their whole thing here is saying, like, all right, who should be responsible for the teams that didn't do so well today, the captains or the rank and file. But the whole thing with Maki and all of them is like, okay. Definitely my favorite parts of these scenes is Ryuji sort of being like a little goofball around everything, and also seeing Kazama again. I do particularly like that. Then we go over to Suwa Squad 7, where they break down all of their scores and talk about their goal today. And the best moment of the chapter is obviously the remembrance of Replica in Chika's unit, and Yuma and Osamu sort of seeing this and realizing it. It is a really great moment and just really awesome. And again, Ashihara, you don't need to say you're sorry about messing up a point total in these chapters. We all know your series is deadly confusing. You don't need to say that. Like, come on, Ashihara. But as all of this goes through, Utagawa stuff again was decently nice. Oh yeah, I forgot we cut to Midorikawa and Kuroe in this chapter for all of a page. I don't know, I've always liked Kumagai as a character, so seeing her stuff in Murakami Squad was decently nice, and also, I love the little panel of, I counter you, I counter your counter, I counter your counter, I counter to my counter, and all of that, pretty fun. And then again, ending off with the whole Taichi stuff, it's okay, I mean, it's sort of is what it is, there's nothing really that special about it. So in the end, I think this was a decent enough chapter of World Trigger. Definitely a lot going on in these, 29 pages that we got here. And I think I've been recording for almost an hour by the time we add the last recording up and this one so far. So, yeah, with that, I don't really have too much to say about this chapter. A lot of good things to see here. And of course, a lot of build up to what will be happening next time as we get into the final day of these special simulation wars here, and then get one step closer to eventually getting to those guerrilla battles outside, or those 2 days of guerrilla warfare in the sealed environment also. So with that, I really don't have too much else to say. Thank you guys very much for watching, as always. And if you did enjoy this, maybe you'd want to go check out some of the other World Trigger videos I have on this channel. They'll be linked in an end card here in this video, so just wait till the last 10 seconds of the video and you can select them there. And if I had to guess, we're probably pretty close to the last 10 seconds, unless I find a way to ramble on from there, like 5 minutes or so, but who knows. And also, if you did enjoy this video, hope you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and leaving me a comment down below saying what you guys thought about this World Trigger chapter. What do you particularly think of Taichi's whole breakdown here and what everybody's done with him? And how warmed was your heart whenever the whole, oh, look, their head's replica that half of us probably didn't even realize. It's such a really nice thing to see there. And yeah, with that, I don't have too much else to say. Thank you guys so very much for watching this World Trigger chapter number 243 review. Again, this chapter was titled The Away Mission Test Part 39. And yeah, I will see you guys next time for chapter number 244, which will presumably be titled The Away Mission Test Part 40, which will be insane whenever it happens, because golly gee. But yeah, thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Glowplasma 231, signing out.